The NHL is back in full swing, and so are we. The games might not feel as meaningful in February, but the potential roster moves certainly do. Just days away from the trade deadline, we come up with 6 of our boldest predictions. Welcome back to the BarDown Podcast, presented by Crown Royal. Crown Royal. Boom, boom. I think I got all the Crown Royal logos in the room. That's just about everything. Gentlemen, I had asked before we had started, to start with? What do you think it feels like the biggest thing to start with other than the obvious trade deadline? And guess what Jesse mentioned?
Guess what he mentioned?
I'm just saying, guys. Winnipeg Jets, 10 wins in a row. Mark Scheifele becomes the franchise's all-time leading goal scorer in overtime. Like, who? You could say, oh, it was against the Blues and the Sharks, but like, I'm legitimately a believer this year in the Jets.
And there we go. See, we did it. Now, Mikko Rantanen.
You want to get into trade talks?
Mikko Rantanen. I want to say that I don't know what the 6 predictions that you guys have are. It's a secret to me. It's a secret to our audience. Let's keep it that way until you have it there. But if one of you does have Mikko Rantanen in here, you feel free to speak up because that does obviously feel like the biggest storyline heading into this.
Guilty as charged.
What, thank you. What, like, a difficult situation to be in if you're the Carolina Hurricanes. You finally attract this star player, this guy who potentially is worth like $13, $14 million a year. You traded for him. He's on your team. So you're making a push. And people are like, what if you traded him again?
After like 10 games.
Yeah. And I mean, his value has just completely plummeted because if you are a team looking for a rental, of course you're getting him for the playoffs. But I mean, there's, of course, a small chance. There is a large chance, I should say, that he also tests the market in the summer. So the question is, obviously Rantanen's an amazing player, but if you are a serious contending team, how much are you really willing to give up for a guy that you're going to be getting even less games out of now than you would have like before Carolina would have traded for him, for example? And yeah, I don't know. It's a tough situation. Carolina's in a tough spot right now.
So, Thomas, if you were Carolina, and let's just say, obviously, they kind of do right now have a history of like second round and out usually. They've gone to an Eastern Conference. I mean, they've won it all before.
Yeah. They've gone to Eastern Conference Final. I don't think they've won an Eastern Conference Final game in their last 2 appearances there. That was a thing for a while. They got swept twice in a row.
Either way, you're kind of synonymous in this current generation of not being able to push past the line, and finally you got the guy to do it. People are telling you to get rid of that guy. What would you do?
I just feel like when they made this trade, they had to have known the risk they were taking because there wasn't any prior negotiation. It wasn't a sign and trade. It wasn't you told us that, I'm open to signing here long term. So you made this decision knowing that it is possible that he walks away. And now it's almost like after a couple games where he hasn't gotten off to the best start, and then it must be tough watching Martin HS over in Colorado looking so good there and immediately having an impact. But I feel like
Burnaby Joe's looking like a genius right now.
When has he not?
Yeah, that's true. Trader Joe's once again making a good trade. I just think
it's a great nickname too, by the way. That just works.
It does work. Don't you have a Trader Joe's shirt?
Yeah, I do. I made one.
Oh, you made it?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Good.
Yeah.
You made it, or you bought it from Temu?
No, I made it.
Not your Temu.
Hey, don't talk smack with Temu.
I just did. But anyways,
speaking of Temu, the Carolina Hurricanes GM is looking like the Temu version of wherever they had. What was it? Don Waddell? That's who they had before.
Yeah.
It's not looking good there for his, first couple moves. But I feel like you have to commit to the move you made, and you're someone that you feel like this team's in a cup window. Just steady the course and keep this guy in your lineup. And then July 1st, whatever happens, happens. Because I just feel like you're going to sell him at pennies on the dollar. And in the end, you're going to wind up with not a great return. And you lost Martin HS for next to nothing. Now you're going into the playoffs without a star player.
Yeah.
And your team is even worse than it was when you started the season, which cannot happen.
Exactly.
I would tend to agree with your full sentiment there. If I were them, I wouldn't trade him. And obviously, if they've traded for him, as you said, they've most likely assessed all of these risks. That being said, if someone does get a little nuts around the trade deadline, I mean, the move itself to get him to Carolina is already like, whoa, like you wouldn't have expected something like that. So if you get some crazy phone call, offering a whole lot, I don't think you're nuts to also just consider that future. But from a neutral perspective, I hope that he just stays put and they make a good run. It'd be fun. You didn't actually make a prediction, though, with that. I just realized. We kind of talked about the subject, but I thought you had a bold prediction attached to him.
Look, I know that we're going bold here, and I agree.
This is about to be mild.
I agree. Like I definitely agree. If I was Carolina, I don't think I would trade Rantanen. Like,
is that your bold prediction, though? Or
no? My bold prediction involves Rantanen and the Jets.
Oh, there it is.
No, man. There's been rumors.
that's why you don't let him talk about it off, on top of the other times he's going to bring it up anyways.
There have been rumors going around about the Jets having interest in Rantanen. I'm just saying. I don't know how much.
What's the initials of the guy who made the rumors? JP?
I don't know how much truth there is to them, but I have seen some stuff. And because we're going bold here, I'm just saying maybe there is something where the Jets give up the house for a guy like Rantanen. And, Rantanen typically plays the wing, right? But I think that if there's a chance that the Jets think that Rantanen could fit into that second line center spot, the Jets really need to upgrade in two areas of their team. If they want to be a real serious contender, in my opinion, they need to upgrade their second line center spot, and they need to get a depth defenseman. But again, when your team's so good, there's also the possibility that you just don't do anything because the Jets have won 10 in a row. But as we've seen in the past, playoffs are a different beast. Yeah.
Sorry, how many games in a row have the Jets won?
10.
I don't think it's
10
been mentioned on
That's
this.
nice.
We actually haven't got to that yet. Is there any other teams you guys see him going to, by the way? Does anyone actually think that there's anyone else, aside from the Jets, who they do fit there? But is there another team that you think might be nuts and do that? Jesse, you can answer this too.
I don't know. Maybe a team like the Oilers would get a little creative. I don't know if
That would be crazy. I want to hear
Rantanen's cap isn't even going to be that bad. Like for a team.
You mean when he gets to the contract, or you mean now? Sorry.
Yeah, now, especially if a team
now
retains even more salary. I mean, you can get a haul for Rantanen. So what I was thinking for the Jets, and Carolina probably would actually want someone who could help them now. Like they probably want an active player. Given the position they're in, but I didn't take that route. I just think that it's a lot. You know what? There is. How much are you really willing to give up for a player that you're going to have for a very short amount of time? But I think if you're the Jets, you got to kind of swing for the fences here and go for a homer. Initially I had Lambert.
They got their homer, I think.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah.
He's sitting right here.
Lambert and 2 firsts, I think, would be
2 firsts.
I don't know, man.
For
it's
someone that
I don't know, man.
Roll the dice.
Dude,
you're in the casino.
Look, maybe it's too much.
I thought it was Vegas of the North.
Look, yeah, exactly. Get your chips on the table. If you're the Jets and you, we have seen the Jets have good regular seasons and then get tossed around in the playoffs. This is an opportunity. You're getting legitimately one of the best goal scorers in the league, a big guy who's capable of playing center. You're solidifying really your entire team. That's a missing piece of the entire team. You're not giving up any active players on the roster right now. And for the Jets, it's you have Scheifele's getting older. You might lose Ehlers next year. You have Connor, whose contract is ending kind of soon. Velarde's playing at an elite level right now. It's this is. You got to take advantage of this window right now. If you're the Jets, maybe it's too much. I don't know. Is Perfetti a guy that you would consider? Is that too much if you're not going to be able to extend Rantanen? Probably, but let's just not forget how good Rantanen is. And just because he's had 7 not great games with Carolina, it doesn't mean that this guy can't be a complete game changer who's won a Stanley Cup before.
A guy who knows just how good Mikko Rantanen
I'm curious.
I mean, you don't even have. Yeah, you have a bold prediction for him, or do you just want to go on with your next bold prediction?
No,
or what his opinion on that take is? Because I'm curious.
It's tough because I've kind of been of the opinion, I think so far, that the Avs maybe knew that on his own, without Nathan MacKinnon, we might see a different version of Mikko Rantanen that's not quite worth $14 million per year, but also not as low as a $10 million player.
I only want to challenge you for 1
between.
second on that.
Yeah.
Because he's played without him. There's massive stretches where he's had to play
there
without
have
him.
been, and
he did
he's
real
still
well.
produced. Yes, 100%. Yeah. And I think maybe that's the infrastructure that Colorado has created, because obviously outside McKinnon, they still have really good players, and you're still playing with a lot of really talented players. I think that, like you said, 10 games is tough. There are kind of feeling out periods in sports that I feel like maybe we don't take into account too much, or put enough stock into, where it's really hard to just go from
Uproot your life.
Entire life. You
Yeah.
never thought you were going to get traded in your entire life. This has shocked you to your core. And even though you know some guys on that team that you've played with internationally in Carolina, like, that doesn't matter. Like, you're playing an entirely different system. You're playing in an entirely different time zone. You're playing in a new home. So I'm not surprised that he's gotten off to a slower start. I will say, though, like, I do think that Necas's incredible start with the Avs and Rantanen's slow start with the Hurricanes does tell me something, that, like, Nathan MacKinnon is an incredible player, and playing with him and Makar and all of these guys definitely can make your life easier. And maybe now there's a little more on Rantanen to produce himself without the elite playmaking that he had with him. I think he's capable of doing that. I just think it's a different style of play that he probably isn't quite used to and hasn't had to do for long stretches. Like, even when MacKinnon was hurt, and let's say Rantanen was playing, like, still producing whatever, I still think your mindset is different, because it's like, yeah, MacKinnon's going to come back. It's like, there's no Nathan MacKinnon walking in any door. You are the guy now. Yeah. You are the best player on the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, that is undoubtedly true, and that's the first time those expectations have been placed on him as a player.
Well, I'd gather that we're going to hear a lot more about Mikko Rantanen before we get to the trade deadline, but we do have other predictions to get to. So, Thomas, haven't heard your voice in at least 5 minutes. I don't know how you're going to edit that, but let's just say around that. Why don't you get to our fifth bold prediction?
Plain and simple, we see this every year, but the Vegas Golden Knights do it again. And the four nations.
What is it? Yeah.
The Four Nations face-off was cruel to the Golden Knights, because they lost their best defenseman within the first couple periods of the tournament. Seeing Shea Theodore go down with a wrist injury. He's currently listed as week to week, but I do feel like they will end up placing him on LTIR. At least there's a very good chance of him going on LTIR, which will free up some space for them to make moves. I talked to a buddy who was a Vegas writer, tried to gauge some interest.
Who's your buddy?
Shout out to Julian Gaudio.
He lives in Vegas?
No, he doesn't live in Vegas.
Does he live in Vaughan?
Covers Vegas for the Hockey News.
Oh, okay.
Shout out to him.
Does he live in Vaughan?
Does live in Vaughan.
Is he Italian?
Of course.
Yeah.
Go on.
Shocker.
Go on. Tried to gauge some interest on what Vegas would like to do, whether or not they will play.
Is he on your soccer team?
No.
Okay. Trade for Erik Karlsson?
No, I'm going to trade for Erik Karlsson. This has been a disaster getting to this trade over here.
It's taking long enough.
Yeah.
All I wanted to say was I think they're going to make a splash because Shea Theodore is going on LTIR, and I think they're going to target Ryan Donato from the Chicago Blackhawks.
All that for that?
He's got 40 points in 50 games this year.
It's not that spicy. I'm saying mild on that one again.
Okay. I personally wanted them to go out and get Ryan O'Reilly. If you look at their lineup, I think that third center spot is something that could use some work. And I think pairing Ryan O'Reilly with Mark Stone could be a big deal. And I think that could work very, very well in the playoffs. The problem is Ryan O'Reilly's got term. He's got a bunch of years left, getting paid a bunch of money. Ryan Donato's UFA at the end of the year. He's far more affordable. He's been producing a ton with Chicago this year. And I think for a couple prospects, maybe someone like Brendan Brisson, Matthew Cataford, and a second-round pick, that's a deal that you can get done.
Did your Vaughn teammate make this suggestion?
No, I made the trade.
I was going to say, because it sounded responsible and accurate. That's why it felt a little less
you don't
bold.
feel like I'm responsible.
No,
I
do.
was as hot as the zit on my index finger.
I don't know whether or not
hot.
that is hot or not. What?
It's not.
We don't need to know if that's hot.
Yeah, but also I just.
You don't think that's a good move? Vegas making a splash?
It might be unsexy.
It's not hot.
It's responsible.
Okay, well, I'm not going to
good.
sit here and say they're going to trade for Sidney Crosby. Like,
There's no Halifax connection, so that would have been stupid anyways.
It's only going to Boston or Colorado.
My one question is, so Donato is UFA at the end of the year?
yes.
Do you not think that Chicago is going to make a bit of an effort to try to keep Donato? Like, if I'm Chicago, I'm like, I don't really need to keep accumulating picks for the future. I need to.
Well, I only have them getting a second. I got them getting a 23-year-old Brendan Brisson, who was a first-round pick and just hasn't worked out in Vegas, and a 19-year-old Matthew Cataford, who's going to eclipse 100 points in the Quebec League this year. And I would rather have those options than a 28-year-old Ryan Donato who, like, let's be honest, he's having a good season, but the first thing we look at when we look at the Chicago Blackhawks is Connor Bedard is not playing with good enough players, and that's who he's playing with right now.
But he doesn't have anyone, man. Like, that's one of the only good players that he's playing with. And I think that if you give up on someone like that so easily, look, they're gonna sign Marner, they're gonna sign Rantanen. I know
None of this,
but I just think that, like, if you're getting rid of Donato, sure, they could get a good haul. It depends who they're getting back, but it's like, I just think Chicago just keeps sending themselves back and back and back.
I think
I'm gonna
we
start
have to
getting more players around.
push the panic button a little bit on this whole Bedard saga in Chicago, and remember that he's 20 years old. Like, I would much rather have 19-year-old and 23-year-old NHL prospects than re-sign Ryan Donato, who, let's be honest, is probably playing this year above what his ceiling is in the NHL. He's 28. Like, you're going to give him 6 years in the offseason and be like, yeah, Bedard, this is the guy you're going to play with. Just, it's not a bad thing to just be bad for a couple more years and just continue to bring in, maybe get, a 19-year-old, 23, maybe only one of them works out, but it's still a young player to pair with Bedard.
I think you got to also think about Bedard's development, though, man.
Yeah.
Like, he's playing with not great players, and then you're gonna take another player away from him. Like,
the last 15 games.
I don't want to just cherry pick examples here, but I would again tend to agree with Jesse in the sense that if you look like a team like Buffalo, where if you just keep putting young players in bad situations where they're used to losing, and maybe you don't put the right veterans around them, but not just veterans, but people of an equal kind of talent level so they can grow, you can mess with someone's development. You can. I'm not saying you're right. I agree. Not panic. Something more nuanced, and it's not about saving this year, but you definitely want to go into next year saying whatever happened last year, we got to move pretty far away from that.
Of course, but to on your point, like, it's totally possible that Chicago is thinking we're gonna get Bedard, someone even better than.
Oh, for sure. This is not to Donato, by the way. I was not making a point on that. Like, so get rid of what you can now if there's some value, and if it gets you something a little bit. But
I'm just countering. I'm making the argument that, like, there is an argument to also keep him
for sure. Luca, got anything that's mild, bold?
I don't know. I think it's bolder than that.
Responsible?
Maybe not responsible. I think it is.
Okay, you responsible takes. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think it's in the ilk more of like the Bowen Byram Casey Middlestat trade last year, with just a guy that is maybe approaching restricted free agency or might have it next offseason. And I think the Rangers, the guy I look to is like, okay, so my bold prediction is a restricted free agent this offseason is going to get dealt in like a player-for-player trade that kind of makes sense for both teams. And the guy I look at is Keandre Miller for the Rangers. I think fans have soured on the D-core in general. I think, like, there's a lot of talks about how, like, I don't know who quoted it, but apparently, like, an anonymous NHL.
Demers.
Well, I don't know who said it to him, but player apparently said playing against Adam Fox in the playoffs isn't difficult, and like they relish that matchup, which it's kind of coming off of the Nations tournament where Fox didn't look his best, I'm sure, but like is still a really good player and has been the Rangers' best defenseman in the playoffs. So earlier this year, Miller and him were playing pretty well together, I think, but I think Rangers fans have really kind of soured on him, and he's lost that opportunity to play with him. I think the Rangers, if they're looking for a reason to kind of spark a rebuild, which is not actually a rebuild, and just kind of give it one more shot with this core, maybe that's a guy you look at dealing to try and get. Maybe it's a Dylan Cousins that you bring in, a forward for a defenseman in the sense that, okay, you're not happy with, we've heard about all these rumors. I know you brought in JT Miller, but like the Chris Kreiders and the Panarins are being dealt potentially all season. Their names have been in rumors. So maybe you bring in a guy like Cousins who just maybe need to change
Buffalo
scenery.
Says no, I think, by the way, for what they're looking.
I think they do too, because of all the defensemen. But I think there's a trade to be made maybe in that sense, to either get another defenseman and have someone play with Fox that gives that look a different dynamic, or to just upgrade your forward group a little after losing Kakko and being a little uncertain about where your future goes with Panarin specifically and with Kreider and some of those veterans. So
it's still wild to hear losing Kakko because they got rid of him.
They got rid of him, for sure.
Okay. Jesse, what is your second prediction here?
So one of my very close friends is a huge Anaheim Ducks fan, and he is under the impression that Trevor Zegras has been so good the past couple of years. He's been responsible defensively and all this stuff, yada, yada, yada. I think that what's happening with Trevor Zegras is kind of just not really good in Anaheim. I mean, the first couple of years, this is a guy who's putting up like 60-plus points. You probably should have been talking about him based on the trajectory at the beginning of his career. Like, this is a guy who like, should have been considered for the Four Nations tournament. He should have just kept going up. And instead, although he's had injury issues, he just like is not producing offensively. And I think it's just, I don't know. I just feel like he needs to get out of there. And I don't know if this is a deal. And, you know, it's funny, Luca, you say it. I think New York is a team that's been thrown around, and maybe there is something like a Keandre Miller for Trevor Zegras kind of deal. I don't know if those are just the only two pieces, but that is actually something, the more I think about it, that could work.
Get that guy closer to NHL headquarters.
Yeah,
Trevor Zegras.
honestly. And like he's such
you know how many marketing things we'd see him in?
He's Showtime, man. He's Showtime. So also another deal that I don't think necessarily has to happen at the trade deadline, but sometimes you see deals that happen at the trade deadline, right? Like with Hronek when he went to Detroit, and
great move.
Yeah, good move. It was a good move, and they didn't.
From
need
went to the Canucks.
Yeah.
From Detroit. Sorry, and that was two teams I don't think even made the playoffs.
No, yeah. But the next year was so good for Vancouver, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I look at a team that could really benefit from a guy like the Canadiens. Puck, we talked about it earlier. The Montreal Canadiens don't really they're not that deep at center. I think that Zegras' upside is a lot higher than Kirby Dach's. And I just think that Anaheim seems like they're in the market for good, fast defensemen, maybe with a bit of experience. If I'm Anaheim, they've been winning some games recently. I'm kind of trying to fast track my. It's not even a rebuild. You want to get good soon because Anaheim has just been bad for a long time.
What say you, Thomas? Do we have a deal here?
Well, but what I was gonna say, I think Mike Matheson is like an interesting guy that could go back in a deal to Anaheim. He's fast. He's 30, but it's not that old. He could really add a good veteran presence to that team and help them get to where they want to be a little quicker. And I think Anaheim's also deep down the middle, right? Like they have McTavish, they have Carlson. I don't know if they need Zegras. They have Gauthier, who I'm pretty sure can play center. Maybe I'm wrong, but
when I look at Trevor Zegras, like 2 years ago, this is something that every Habs fan was kind of dream up, like a way for Caulfield and Zegras to play together again. They're such good friends. But if you just look at the production in the last 2 years, and what Montreal's also done, we took a chance on Alex Newhook, a first-round pick who had a slow start. We took a chance on Kirby Dach, a first-round pick who had a slow start. Both players have been we don't have to talk about that. Both players have been like solid, but they haven't really like hit their ceilings, I think. And now they also took a chance on Patty Laine, and I know that's a bit of a different situation. He's also going to be a UFA in 2 years. But
that is a lot of, by the way, chances on like people who haven't necessarily worked out.
Because they've tried to kind of accelerate the rebuild where, like, yes, they've drafted a lot of players, but they've also tried to target those kind of young players that maybe aren't hitting the heights that people expected them.
Zegras is 23.
Yeah.
And he has shown, man, he can be a really, really good offensive player.
Like, I agree with you in the sense that I think Montreal needs more help at center, and the players they have coming up, like, everyone hopes that Demidov's going to come up next year. He's also not a centerman, too, so
you have
I don't hate it at the right. Like, I do like Matheson. He plays an important role on the team. He plays the most minutes of any defenseman.
But you have other guys, other defensemen that are coming through the system. I just think throwing a guy like Zegras into the mix there, good young player with upside at center, could be a really good second-line center option in Montreal.
Thomas, you're right. Lane Hudson for Dylan Cousins, straight up. Appreciate it.
I would rather not do that, but
Luca?
I would like Dylan Cousins, though.
I almost skipped you because I guess you were just speaking, but we'll keep hearing from you here. What was your second prediction?
So I've been looking at those standings there in the Pacific Division, and I can't help feeling horrible not the Buffalo.
On the cellar? Yeah, look at the cellar because I've been staring at that.
Just can't help feeling bad for the LA Kings once again. They just feel like they're pigeonholed in that 3 spot, and they're destined to face the Oilers again in the first round.
Who they could beat.
Gotta exercise the demons eventually.
LA's a great team. I know in their last little while they kind of sputtered a bit, but they had such a good start to the season. They look like such a complete team. They're doing really, really well. I just think that if you're going to go up against Edmonton or if you're going to go up against Vegas in the first round, you just need more firepower. And my prediction is that the LA Kings make the biggest splash of trade deadline.
Interesting.
And they go out and they get the biggest forward available. Whether you think that's Rickard Rakell, whether you think that's Braden Shen, they need someone
who can Brock play. Besser?
That's one that I almost didn't consider.
Just like a sniper.
Yeah, Vancouver's just
Do you-
probably the weirdest situation in the NHL right now with what they're doing with their assets.
Do you think it's then one of the guys that's like on the trade bait board kind of thing where it's like a Brock Nelson or a Ricard Raquel, and does that do enough? Because like in my mind, if they trade for any of those names you mentioned, like I don't feel any better about their chances. Like I think it'd have to be a guy off the board, like a Brock Besser, like a Pedersen, like a Cousins maybe, that gets me a little more excited than a Brock
changer.
Nelson.
I don't disagree with that because, yeah, like even Ricard Raquel, you look at the LA Kings, I think they need help in the top 6, and I think he fits in
agree.
on like their second line as a right winger, and he's producing at a very high rate this year.
But is that because he's playing with Crosby?
Yeah, and also is that enough to go toe-to-toe with the Oilers, who are going to roll McDavid, Draisaitl, and Evan Bouchard out on their first power play?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think they need to take a really solid look at their team. They also have a pretty nice prospect pool where they have intriguing assets that I think a lot of teams would be interested in trading for. So they need to do something. And
Par with Brian Clark at the right price.
I feel like that whole situation does not make sense to me. No, I wouldn't. You're not going to part with a 21-year-old defenseman who looks really good, even if you can get a top guy. I'm talking more about your like Francesco Pinelli's.
It's tough for them though, because I feel like, I mean, it's always tough to make that move again when you've been burned by it, and when PLD kind of burned them in that move. That one, in my mind, was just like, I mean, not only the players you gave up and how well they're doing in Winnipeg now, but then like just having to get that contract off the books. You probably, and that's a swing that I think a lot of teams were willing to make at that point, and I think we all applauded them for kind of making that swing because of what they were doing, the direction they were going, what they needed for their team, a game breaker, which we thought. And so I feel like you always have a little, not buyer's remorse, but I'd say you're probably thinking a little harder about it the second time around.
At the same time, though, you got to keep swinging. You don't know where the home run will come
you
from
have to.
because, I mean, Washington swing with him
Exactly.
pretty well. So.
It just takes the right fit for a certain guy. It's,
First pitch home run's great, but I'll take it on the third, fourth, fifth, whatever it is.
especially if you're the Kings, if you're getting ready to go toe-to-toe with the Oilers again, like you've seen this team. I think by now you probably know what you need, hopefully, and hopefully you go get it.
All right, Luca, who else should people go and get? It's the final bold prediction. Put some spice on this thing.
I think we have to talk about the Sabres a little bit because
We don't have to.
No,
That's perfectly okay. I don't think anyone was.
they could very well be a team that is like the seller that
Is that seller with an S or a C?
both at this point, but they could really be a team that shapes the deadline in a way that contenders are calling them for some big pieces. And I know that when I looked at the TSN trade bait board, like obviously Cousins is on there, but surprisingly Byram's on there. I don't think they trade Byram.
I don't
he's
think
been
they do either.
exceptional.
They've said as much. It seems
Exactly.
like they're very confident keeping
But-
him and want to.
Cousins alone, I think, is the guy that I look at as like, and I think of him in way higher of a regard than Casey Middlestat last year, and Middlestat fetched Byram. And so that's my bold prediction, is that Dylan Cousins gets traded to a contender, and it's the biggest trade of the day, because I think that given his past production, I know this season's been really tough for him, but given his past production, his age, like there is a contending team out there that I think would be willing to spend the capital to get him and be very happy to slot him into their lineup for a playoff push. I think he's so talented. We saw him at the World Hockey Championships. Like, he was Team Canada's leader in so many different ways in production and goal scoring, and it just hasn't worked out in Buffalo for him. And I think if you're the Sabres too, surprise. But if you're the Sabres too, I think this might
the
be
knife a little more while it's in.
Twist the knife a little more. This might be the perfect time to kind of just cut the cord and get what you can in return for him.
I just hope he doesn't join that list of illustrious players who go on to.
He
greater
very well
success.
could.
Why does every team I support is a black hole for talent?
Yeah.
They just
He
get
very well
absorbed
could.
and go somewhere else, and then suddenly they're like, "Oh, the sun! It's so great on my face." Anyways,
I don't have a team for him.
Well,
So, like
I'll say this: my Ryan Donato worst hot take ever because it was too cold started
chili.
off with
No
finding
chili
a way
flakes on that
to
thing.
get Dylan Cousins to Vegas.
Yeah.
Then I looked at one, obviously the cap situation, the LTR stuff helps.
Yeah.
But the term with Cousins is like, you need this contract on the books for another 5 years.
For another 5 years. Mm-hmm. I think
what
Dallas,
stopped it was like Vegas just has absolutely nothing to offer to get Dylan Cousins.
That's fair.
They got no prospects, they got no picks, and no roster players that would be receivers, so.
And they still find a way. But I think Dallas might be an interesting one with Ben and Sagan coming off the books in the coming years, and like the core they've built there is able
good
to
prices on people too. So
great prices on people that have been locked up long term already. Yeah, exactly. And like you're taking a flyer on a young guy that will immediately be in your top 6 as soon as next year if. Let's say you don't want to bring back Ben and Sagan for that price.
Is he a center though, or does he play the wing? Typically, Cousins.
He does both. They flip him around. I mean, obviously you're always gonna have more value at center. But
Cousins is a 2C for the Jets.
Could be a spot too. Could be a good spot too.
Also, I don't know. I feel like we need to revisit it. Is 2 firsts and Lambert too much for Rantanen?
We'll let the audience decide that one. All right, if you're enjoying what you're watching so far, of course, give the video a like, subscribe to the BarDown channel. We appreciate it. But yeah, let's move on to the next thing. I got a next set of questions for you guys. Are you ready here? Who wants to start out here? I'm looking at you, Thomas.
All right, let's hear it.
How many references to Vaughn can he make in this one?
Ooh,
0.
This is good.
I didn't even bring it upon myself. You guys asked me. I said, "Oh yeah, I have a buddy who covers the Golden Knights," and bam, is he from Vaughn right away?
25 games remaining. 13 goals away at the time of recording. Is Ovi going to get it done this year?
Well, he plays with Dylan Strome, who once upon a time played for the Vaughn Kings. So,
wow, there's the Vaughn reference. There you go.
That was good.
It's a good one.
The challenge was given to you.
All right. Does he get it done this year? Absolutely, he gets it done. And I think for even bigger spectacle, he does it the final game of the season against the Pittsburgh Penguins, who were a long-standing rival
drama
of the Washington Capitals, and this barrier that he couldn't get by in the playoffs year after year after year. I feel like that would be poetic.
That's really nice.
And like, yeah.
Wouldn't it be poetic if he did it in Winnipeg?
Okay, so
when I'm
the
there,
challenge was for Vaughn, not for Winnipeg.
I'm going to that game.
We believe you.
I'm going to that game, and it is possible. He needs 13 goals.
We believe you. I believe you.
13 goals in 14 games. I will be there. I'm going there for one night to see it. My favorite player growing up, and if he did it in Winnipeg and I wasn't there, I would be kicking myself.
So now we were talking Four Nations, obviously a ton last week. A lot of hype from it. There was a lot of talk about rosters for the Olympics that came out of it. And here comes this question, Jesse. I'm going to put this one on your plate here. Will Connor Bedard be on the 2026 Canada Olympic roster?
Such a good question. And you know what? I actually just made a video, which I have not released yet. And
it's in the cupboards.
I personally would send Connor Bedard there, but I don't know why my gut is just telling me that he's not going to be on the team. Because I think that Chicago is going to go out. I don't know when the team needs to be finalized by, but from what we've seen so far this year, I think Hockey Canada is going to say, are we going to bring Bedard over a guy like Seth Jarvis, who probably similar size, tons of skill, has been doing better than Bedard probably for where he's at. I think that they're going to get him some good talent to play with next year, and I think he's going to show everyone how damn good he is. I'm so torn on this one.
I think it's okay to want to, you need to see more. I mean, it's kind of the nature of these questions as well, as I'm making you answer it February, 25th or 25th in 2025. So a lot can change.
I want him to so badly. I just feel like the way Hockey Canada is going to pick the team, they're not going to take him as of now, but a lot can change. And I think that this also raises a point. Like, who would you rather have on Team Canada next year between Bedard and Macklin Celebrini? Like, Celebrini, you can make an argument for both. Like, Celebrini has been incredible as a rookie. And I know it's hard to see second-year players make teams like this. We saw Crosby get snubbed, right, in his second year. But
what year was Doughty and Taves?
2010.
No, I mean, like, what year were they in?
Oh man, maybe 2 or 3.
Doughty may have been in his third year. Taves would have been in, like, his third or fourth.
All right. Our final question here, Luca, goes to you. There was a fight in the PWHL, but should fighting be allowed in the PWHL?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see any reason for it. I mean, hockey is hockey through and through, and the rules, like, I know they have subtle rule changes with like the jailbreak thing, which I think is actually great, and I think the NHL should look to adopt something like that. But like, fighting in hockey is fighting in hockey, and it should be allowed in the PWHL if they're gonna fight.
When that had happened, and obviously people were talking about it because they were sharing the clips, like there was part of me that didn't realize that just like wasn't there. Because then when you think about it, you're like, yeah, what's the difference? It's also the thing I thought about with cages. Like, forgive my ignorance, but what is the reason? Is there a particular reason why they have to wear cages?
That
like, you
I don't
didn't
know.
want to.
I
Could you?
truly, I don't know. I'm literally have no idea, but like I think that's the biggest talking point out of it is just like, why don't they wear visors? Like, why do they just wear cages strictly or fishbowls?
I'd be fascinated to hear like what players would want to do that if they could, or if they actually are blocked even from them. Because truthfully, I have no idea.
I mean, I think like what we can all agree with is like, ever since the inception of this league, like if you've watched any games, the physicality in it's a different level that you've seen internationally. Like I think that they have allowed them to play a really physical brand of hockey where even though like body contact or body checking technically is not allowed, it is allowed. Like they finish their checks, they hit, they fight now, as you can see. And so those are all calling cards of hockey as a sport, and it has been forever. And so I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be allowed.
It's always the coolest part of the PWHL is like you're watching a league and a sport just evolve before your very eyes, and it happens a lot quicker than other, established leagues at the NHL.
Very much so.
And they should consider themselves lucky that they are forced to wear cages. In my opinion, I wouldn't. Want to wear a
we have the option, and
I wouldn't either.
And also, I'm
like
saying,
my eyes.
Bedard makes the team.
He's going back.
No, this is what I said in the video. I'm a wishful thinker, and I think Chicago's going to do the right thing. They're going to throw it back at someone like Rantanen, and they're going to
keep Ryan Donato.
This guy just
at all costs.
He just kicked someone from Winnipeg off the team, Seth Jarvis.
I never said that. I never said that. I just said I think Bedard's also going to make the team.
Get Kyle Connor Canadian citizenship.
Yeah,
that's what they need in their top six.
Is that the top 10 player in Four
Canada
Nations
would not be sending him. I'll tell you that.
Is that Kyle Connor?
No. But we
Mr. Lottery Ticket himself.
We can all agree that was
a
a terrible decision by Team USA to bench.
Not from where we're standing or sitting. We didn't mind it at all.
Last segment, that deserves a crown. It's got to be Seth Jarvis' buddies driving down to Boston after flights got canceled. Through all the snow in this country that we've endured over the last little while, they made the drive. They made the over a day trek.
30 hours.
30 hours.
I met one of them. Not one of the ones that drove, but I met one of the buddies who was in that picture. I saw him in Winnipeg last weekend. He was telling me a bit about the story. Crazy.
Well worth it. Well worth, obviously, the drive and all the kilometers because they got to see their buddy win the Four Nations face-off. And I imagine the celebration after was incredible. So that definitely deserves a crown, if anything. That's like the ultimate assist right there.
Guys, I got something to admit that I'm not proud of, that I was just reminded of here. So after Canada won, and the adrenaline is flowing through you, and you've spent the better part of a couple hours staring at jerseys, I was like,
this guy got a jersey.
I wonder if there's any more of these Canada jerseys in stock.
This guy got a jersey.
They're out of stock. But I found one on Kijiji. A gentleman from Scarborough had one up for $220. And I thought to myself, he had pictures. It was real. And I went, this guy doesn't know what he's got here. So I made the text. I asked him if it was available. And it was. And I was like, okay, well, maybe we can meet downtown. By the time he'd woken up, he'd received so many offers for this thing. And he was like, listen, man, like, you're going to have to do a lot better than what you offered. And I walked away and I'm like, I don't like that jersey enough for that. But there also was one that went up on eBay at the exact same time. The moment the game was done, and it went up for $200 starting bidding. What do you think it's at right now?
I think it's at, is it just a blank jersey?
It's just a blank, large jersey. And
$1,000.
$730.
I'll say $1,100.
$780.
Jesus.
Oh.
It's not even that much more than what Fnatic sells them for.
Also, Are you guys stupid or something? Like, you can buy these now for $400 with a name on it. I guess, like, that's the thing. Like, maybe they want other names. Like, you're an idiot.
Wait,
I'm sorry.
I
if you
thought
pay for that.
You
Like,
say you're out of stock.
they're out of stock, but you can get them on eBay for buy it now. It's not the only jersey that exists out
I
there.
see.
Are you stupid? Wait, stupid? Like, what's going on?
Check the standing.
$780.
It's a sick jersey. I'm not gonna lie.
It's definitely not
Let's rewind.
$800.
Completely held up by the event. It's a
I
mid-candid
think the
jersey.
jersey's going for so much because of like
Of course.
what the tournament
meaning.
is becoming.
For sure.
For sure. It's symbolic of something.
This honor box looks like it's in some good shape.
Yeah, this is symbolic that I need a new phone case. Goodbye, everyone.